to Corporate Cafecito, a podcast based on professional development, career growth, and respecting our cultural identity. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Corporate Cafecito, donde nunca nos faltan amazing Latino leaders that are making things happen. And today is no exception. I have Piero with me, and he has been all over Latin America. Ahora está en Florida, but he has been like the head of digital marketing. He has done lots of stuff in finance, and now he's actually started his own company that he's going to tell us about. But Piero, bienvenido. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Nayeli, so happy to be here, and thank you. Nice to share this cafecito with you. So like you just said, I've been kind of like trying to shape, my life, my career in banking, insurance, investment funds. Then I went on to Scotiabank for a big, super cool regional role on digital banking. I also had a fintech, my first fintech startup, an interesting story. And now we are on a mission to revolutionize banking for the 60 million US Hispanics.
I love it. I love it. I think we need to talk a little bit about the Scotiabank position, because you were the head of digital banking for them, right? So how does one get a job like that or prepare for a job like that? ¿Quién te vio? ¿Tienes un padrino? Who's your fairy godmother?
Funny story, an interesting one. I think so. This is when you kind of gotta believe in serendipity / visualization, whatever. Because here's the thing, I started out in financial sector, banking, insurance, and all those stuff in my country, Dominican Republic. At one point, one day I saw this concept like 5 years before I even got contacted, this concept of the digital factory from Scotiabank. And I said, this sounds amazing. And, atrevido as I am, I just mailed them and said, hey, I think we could bring this to my country and whatever. No one answered. That went into maybe a spam email inbox or whatever. And, fast forward like maybe 7 years, my wife and I, we were kind of like, we want to move to a different country to have a bigger impact on millions of people. And one of those causes was obviously the one we're tackling now. And we were kind of like on that phase and that mindset. And one day, I just got a message in my DM and in LinkedIn, and they said, listen, we are looking for a head of digital banking for Caribbean, Central America, and Uruguay. And the role should be a mix of tech and business. I had already done my first fintech startup, and I had already done, commercial type of roles in financial sector. So first thought was, I can definitely do that. It really felt like a good fit. And it really felt like what I was hoping to get, but I had no idea about Scotiabank, like that would be one option, right? So going back to that email I had sent them 7 years ago, it was like this huge serendipity. I'm like, so did you finally get my email? Obviously not. It had nothing to do with that.
They're like, Piero, are you still interested?
It was this very senior role. It was a very general manager type of role where it was a huge step up, and I had a chance to learn a lot, meet new people, but also implement lots of stuff that I had been yearning to implement or to do and that I had learned before. So it was an amazing experience, and one that I was very lucky to have. But it was mostly, and most importantly, the step towards my next milestone.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to talk about your next milestone. But first, I want to talk about your first milestone, which was when you started the fintech. Maybe describe a little bit of what fintech is, and then tell us like what you learned on that journey, like of starting and then stopping a company?
Yeah, so fintech is the merge of financial technology when you obviously put a very strong software technology component to financial services.
You know,
It
wait, I have a question. Sorry.
yeah,
When we think about fintech, is it also just like the apps that the phones have, or is it like is it like when I think of this, I'm going to date myself, like Mint or all of those that like, is everything fintech, PayPal, all that, or is it a
that's a
very
very good
specific thing?
question. Yeah, fintech has like very different categories, and eventually there's this huge popular saying in my world, which is every company will be a fintech company eventually, because obviously there's a fintech component even in the e-commerce side where you buy your whatever. So
Mhm.
yes, and in fact, Mint.com, the example you just made, my first fintech was a Mint.com for Dominican Republic.
Oh,
So that
nice.
yeah, we actually tried that out. I think it was a little bit ahead of its time. We learned a lot. We had some successes. We also had some non-successes, but very huge learnings. We had to obviously it was a phase in my life where very very a huge growth phase, if you may. Um, but somehow when you connect the dots, it helped me learn not only what to do, but what not to do, which sometimes is much more valuable. So that first fintech was part of my
Training.
plan. No,
Yeah,
and part of my
plan.
plan
Yeah.
from day one, because
Mhm.
the thing is, ever since I can remember, I always knew I wanted to have my own business. I always knew I wanted to have my own company. And in fact, I even told my then girlfriend, which is now my wife, I tell her one day I'm gonna have a bank one day. And it was like I was like 17 years old. And when I went into these jobs at banks and insurance companies, you name it, I always went to kind of like prep myself, kind of like
Mhm.
as a training mode, just to
Right.
make sure that I learned the technical skills, the personal skills, the work environment skills, and the strategic thinking kind of mindset and the managerial kind of mindset. Because going back to my background, I come from a family of artists. My dad, my
Mhm.
uncle, my brother, my cousins, they all either one of them is a singer, one of them is TV star, so whatever. So
They're like, you're gonna do a bank?
yeah, and I was born with a license to dream.
Mhm.
So and with a license to be creative and to connect the dots and to think big and to speak and to
Yeah.
articulate a message. But I knew that if I wanted to achieve what I always wanted, I had to not only prep myself, technically speaking, and all those aspects, but also,
Mhm.
but even build a thicker skin, right? So that's when that journey kicked off, and I
Mhm.
went into these places to work, trying to find that training.
You know, that's one of the things I give a lot of advice on. I'm like, it's so good when you work for a big company, the L&D and the training, the experiences that you provide, that you get provided and the investment they make in you is so important to understand how all the different functions work, right? Like, it's funny you say everything's a fintech company. I always say everyone's in sales, right? If you're in marketing, you're trying to sell people on your product and the brand and the image. I'm like, even the finance team is trying to sell you on a budget or like what you can and can't spend. So you see everything through fintech and I see everything through ventas. But I think it's really important to get a solid background, or if you can't get it through a corporation, if you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, to still invest in learning some of those like managerial styles or leadership training so that you can continue to grow and be well-rounded. I love what you said, that your family gave you permission to dream, or like the idea of dreaming. And it's kind of funny because you know you usually hear the opposite, right? We'll have a family of gente que está trabajando and we're all, you know, in construction or whatever, and we'll have like one person who's an artist and we're like, what are you doing? Did you face the same?
Well, I actually even had my own TV show when I was like 9 years old, so I actually took a stab at it. My dad was always supportive of whatever we wanted to do. He was never, encouraging us to go into TV or anything. So, that was very good. And that was very, we felt that freedom. It was very nice to have.
Yeah.
Somehow it felt like I was like that black sheep in a sense, but it was like for my family, like from the get-go, is very expected that I love business and that eventually I would go into something around business. And like going into this type of jobs knowingly where you're just seeking to get that background and training and stuff is because, well, one day I said, if I'm successful how I plan to be and I would like to be, eventually we will have to deal with a big size type of company.
Right.
So let's just might as well go and learn how they do it. And there's so many smart people, way smarter than me, just working at this incredible big financial institutions. So much to learn from them and with them. And having that perspective in and out, big and small, obviously was very enriching.
I wanted to ask you, one of the things that you've been vocal about is like some of the anxiety attacks you had when you started your own company. And could you, a lot of times, no se ve, right? When you're from the outside, you look like, oh, that person has their own company. Everything must be going great. They're their own boss. But then to have that panic or that anxiety sink in is very real. How did you address them, or what did you do to help get you through them?
A lot of times we see people we admire anywhere and they're speaking about their successes and you're like, I'm very far away from that. But the truth is, everyone has their issues and their struggles. And so I one of the things you have to learn is not compare yourself to the image that you're seeing from someone else, especially when they clip out only the successful part. So that's number one. Number two is, I think everyone has things to learn. Everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. I think just trying to understand which are those in each of our specific personal case is paramount. And in my case, I kind of like knew that I was very emotional. I've always been a very emotional person, and that's actually maybe one of the traits that has always allowed me to dream and to think big and to maybe idealize and whatnot. Right? If I was maybe more 100% rational, logical, and risk, maybe I couldn't even be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship has that secret power of just saying, how hard could it be when it's really, really hard?
Really hard. Yeah.
The truth is, I always knew I had to build that thicker skin. But before I got to master that ability, I went through many struggles, typical of a entrepreneurial journey with ups and downs. And one of those downs, I remember, right, like I can really remember like it was yesterday. The startup was not going well. It was not picking up. We had success. We had raised money from angel investors. And when things go bad, just like when an investor says no, when things go bad, you feel that it's a referendum on yourself. You take it personal, right? So, plus, the team I had hired and the technology, each of the components or the pillars of the startup at that moment were like falling, and it was a very hard moment. And I remember having panic attacks and taking it completely personal, because why wouldn't I, right? Everyone was clapping and applauding and just celebrating when we started and we were having those successes. So I took it as personal when things went the other side. So I learned a lot, and I had to read a lot, do a lot of soul searching. And, you have to understand that you are not your thoughts. You are not that image that you create of yourself.
Right.
Those one thing is your thoughts and your brain and whatever, and one thing is yourself and your true self. And And you also get like century old learnings, like this too shall pass. And
Mm.
you gotta maybe build that thicker skin, as I was saying before, and eventually you get past that. But yeah, it was a very hard moment. And when we had to close the company, after that, there was like this mourning period, like type
Yeah,
of feeling. So,
it
but
is hard. I had a company, it was a trucking company. And I remember the first time I had a truck stolen and I had a full panic attack and, like my arms went numb and I was shaking and it was just a whole new level that I had never felt. I go to weekly therapy. I still go to weekly therapy. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I could always need it. I always need it. So, just to get things out and process them out loud with someone else. Um, but it's, you kind of get to that point and then you feel like, okay, now I have a new calm. And then you reach a new point where it happens again, because I think every time we're experiencing something big and new for the first time, your body like reacts to it like, no, 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 hold up. And I think it's a very brave person who can continue going and, has been like, nope, me tumbaron una vez, but I'm going to get right back up and start all over again. I admire that. And I also think it's really important, because we're going to talk about what you're doing now, but I think it's important for people to know that, what, you could try something and it not work, but it doesn't mean you have to stop trying. Piero has launched a new company, and that's what brought him and his beautiful family to the US, to Florida. And I think part of being an immigrant is getting here and maybe not knowing what to do or how to do it. And Piero is going to solve part of that for us. And I'm trying not to say what you're doing so that you can say what you're doing.
yes, I think everyone who can relate to moving to a new country
Mhm.
has felt that uncertainty of just trying to migrate not just your physical self, but your financial life with you,
Mhm.
right? When you relocate, when you come here to start a business, or when you come here to work, um, you know, it's very hard to get set up. It's very hard to, speak about your license, your insurance, your credit card, your credit history, your the housing,
Yes.
you name it, right? So there's so many things, and usually in Latam, we're used to calling someone, "Hey, how do you do this, or how do you do that, or help
Mhm.
me out with this or with that." So it's 2024. It should be as easy as just logging in with Google, or logging in with Facebook. That's how easy it should be, right?
Yes.
So that's how we have built, or that was the inspiration behind Pana. And Pana started out making it 10 times easier for people to open bank accounts with just their passport, and send remittance overseas. That's how we started. We got into Y Combinator.
What's that?
Y Combinator
Mhm.
is one of the biggest accelerators and investors in the US and the world. Maybe a lot of
Wonderful.
the unicorns you hear about, maybe Airbnb, Dropbox, DoorDash, Instacart, you name it, they
Wow.
come from out of Y Combinator. So we were lucky enough to
Not
be a
lucky
part of it.
enough. Te lo ganaste.
Well, we're truly thankful for having been there and having had that experience.
Yeah.
It was a dream come true, and we got into YC, as we call it. And, you know, we took out our MVP. And once you get out your MVP, that's the time you start learning and getting feedback from customers, and you start iterating on
Mhm.
that feedback. And that loop, makes you improve your product. So fast forward,
Yeah.
within the last year, we've been able to grow, have a very good exponential growth, which is what obviously every startup wants. We have been able to develop a bespoke technology that helps us unlock a highly profitable customer base that big banks see as unprofitable. So that was number one. Number two, our customers, without any type of incentives, have made us their primary bank account, which is very important. And we have not only served them with bank accounts and remittance, but we've started out, cross-selling with other products. Now we have recently launched something we're very proud about, we're proud of and excited about, which is Hola Pana. And Hola Pana is the first financial mobility package. So we help you get your first phone line, your first insurance, health insurance, your first bank account, your first advisory in migration, in tax returns. So that pana, that friend, that cuate, or whatever you need when you come to the
Yeah.
US, that
Yeah.
familiar hand, that that pana is what we're personifying and bringing into a product and service with Hola Pana, and our customers are already loving it.
And I love it. So with Pana, you could have a bank account here and also send it back home, right?
Yes.
And I think that's so important because, we just think of ways to send it, and then there's so many fees, or you're not able to track it, or you just kind of hope. And then I think it's a really important way. I mean, when we were talking, I told you, like, for Mexico, I think that's like the biggest import they have is the money from the US. Export might be oil or something else, but it's really important once we get here, to have something that can help link us or help give us a sense of identity, an ability to set up networks, like you said, like a phone line, and even into health insurance, to have that, that friend or that account or that digital asset where you could be like, okay, if I log in here, it's going to be okay. It's going to give me a lot of information. Do you set up your Pana account in the US, or do you set it up? Can you set it up anywhere? How do you link it with your family members abroad?
Yeah, so you can start your process even before you get to the US,
Mhm.
and you can open your bank account once here. You can access Hola Pana, which is kind of like that concierge type of service or advisor, and we can help you out on this other fronts, from comprehensive products and services around your moving into the US. And you can indeed send to 27 countries in cash deposit, bank deposit, cash pickup, cash delivery. So in many ways. And one of the things we're seeing now is that our customers are kind of like very thankful, because before they had no one they can ask about the taxes thing, or the
Mhm.
insurance thing, or the banking thing, or whatever. So now we have kind of like created this service, which is that Pana that we all need, right? And
Yeah.
because it really feels horrible when you come into a new country, you have no one to call, no one to ask, or it feels like when you're starting from scratch, because you had to move and you don't have that credit history with you. So we're not no one. We're someone, and
Yes.
we're obviously trying to articulate that.
I love that you said, when you have no one to ask. And I'm gonna say that that's one point, but I also think sometimes the information we give ourselves is wrong because none of us knows it right. So
Yeah.
sometimes you may have a friend and you're like, ¿Cómo se hace esto? And they'll tell you, but you're like, that's
Un
not
pana.
right. Yeah, that's not right either. So
Yeah, we usually say that not everyone needs a bank or an insurance company, but everyone needs a pana. Everyone needs a
yeah.
friend.
And I love that that's what you named it, because I think that that's really important, right? This is going to be someone, and I say someone, and because a pana, but we need that guidance. We need that hand holding in the things that we are not experts in, and to understand that we're not experts in there. But I feel that your product, Piero, is like looking out for so many. And it is such a heartfelt initiative. And what made you want to do this?
So I came on a trip to the US, and I lived in flesh and bones exactly the pain points that we're trying to solve. I
Mhm.
tried opening a bank account. And then when we moved to the US with my family, literally, like, while I was getting my SSN with my work visa,
Mhm.
I was in the process of renting a house, and it was horrible because I didn't have any pay stubs in the US support my financial perspective. I did have a financial history back in my home country, but it was useless. But I'm the same credit worthy person. Why am I invisible to you guys, like to the system, right? So
Yes.
that was one question. The way I felt when I was getting my bank account is like they didn't care for my business. Three, when you get a phone line at that moment, you either need an SSN or an ITIN number.
Mhm.
I couldn't get a postpaid. So the insurance, who do you call? Do you
Yeah.
know any brokers? Like, yes, I know
Yeah.
one, nowhere. So there's this sense of familiarity and community within our LATAM countries, which does not happen here, that we all are used to it. So we're bringing that close by advisor or friend 24/7 that you can say, hey, how do you really deal with this? Or the tax thing, right? Do your
Right.
taxes every year, set a self-reminder. Hola Pana even includes, we file your taxes for you once a year as part of the plan. So we're here to help you.
I love it. I love it. And I mean, what better way to be inspired than to have lived through it and know the pain points so you know what to solve for.
Yeah.
So, Piero, as you think back to 17-year-old you that was like, I'm going to open a bank, what advice would you give yourself?
Oof. Tranquilo. Don't go crazy. You know, don't, things will turn out okay. It will be okay. You're gonna, be able to reach your goals, achieve your dreams. And no vale la pena ese sufrimiento. You're gonna be okay. So yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you're probably like, and marry her, right?
for sure.
And you have
Absolutely.
2 kids, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How old are they?
Piero is 7 and Victoria is 2.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
It's always a good stage. There's never a stage where it's a bad stage. I've enjoyed my kids, they're now 11 and 13. I've enjoyed every second of it. So good.
Yes.
Well, I love it. On behalf of the people who listen to Corporate Cafecito, thanks for looking out for us. And thanks for coming on here and sharing your story.
No, please. Thank you guys for
Mhm.
having me. And, it's tough out there, but it's so worth it. So anyone who's thinking of starting something, and if you need any help, I'm happy to help. So no, thank you guys for having me.
No, thank you. If you need a pana, yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are. All right. Well, thank you so much, Piero. Aquí te esperamos. I'm sure we'll see you again. And thanks everyone for tuning into Corporate Cafecito. We'll see you next week.